Okay. So I wanted to start this video by saying that if you feel like a seeker, if you feel like someone who hasn't yet had an awakening, who isn't yet awake, hasn't had a shift, then I could say to that you are already awake, or you are awakeness. Maybe pretending to be a someone, a person that exists in time, looking for awakening, or looking for something. But in reality, it's what you are is awakeness itself, seeming to pretend to be a person, looking for yourself, looking for awakeness, creating a self, a me, to look for yourself. Whereas what you are already is awakeness anyway. As in, it's already done. So the awakening is never going to happen. It doesn't happen to a person. It doesn't happen in time. Because it's already the case, it's already happened. In fact, it never needed to be to happen, because that's the way it is anyway. And the awakening is not something that's going to happen to you in the future, not an experience that is going to happen to a person, a me. It's done. It's already the way it is. You, awakeness, are creating a fiction that believes in itself as a real thing, that believes it's going to find something. It's really quite ridiculous. It's really quite ridiculous when this remembering, this recognition, this realization sets in, when it becomes clear that that was all, the seeking was all added to. It was a seeming movement away from what you already are. As in, we didn't need to do anything, go anywhere, find anything to recognise this. We just had to stop and notice, remember, recognise what we already are. Pardon me. So if you feel like you're not getting it, then who is the you that's not getting it? Do you believe that you are someone looking for something? Do you believe that you are not already awake? It's the thoughts that we are identified with that seem to obscure this. It's the belief that I am a me looking for something. I am a me that's not awake. I am a me that has to find something or do something to recognise, to realise this, something which I already inherently don't have. Whereas it's not like that. All you need to do is stop, have open clarity, don't pursue anything. we can maybe ask some questions. What already is? What am I that knows, going right back, what am I that knows the experience of seeking? What am I that knows the me that's dissatisfied, the me that doesn't seem to get it, the me that's not awake? What am I that knows that whole story? The story of the seeker, the story of the one trying to attain something. What am I that knows all of that? Or what am I that's aware of all of that? What am I that's the presence, the awareness in which all of that appears, all of that is allowed to be? And where is it? Because nothing the mind can say about this is true. And I often, this is the difficult thing about these videos, because I'm going to talk in a subjective sense, using I and me to describe things, but that's just a story. That's not real. I don't believe that. It doesn't have inherent reality. It's a way of communicating between two seemingly separate entities. It's just the limits of language. But often I'll talk to people and they'll say, I'm having trouble with this. I had a awakening experience, but I can't get back there. And that's all just a story. A story that always appears now in the awakeness, in the knowingness that knows it. It's added to what is primary. It appears in and as awakeness itself, which is you, anyway. So all I can see when I talk to people is awakeness, beingness, unity, myself, as awakeness, not as an identity. Pretending or believing in seeming to believe in a story about specifics, a story about a separate character. Pretending to not be awakeness in the first place. Anything the mind can say about this awakening is not true. As in, anything the mind says appears in it, comes after, is added to what already is, this presence, this awakeness, this being. Nothing can not be that. It's not possible. It's not possible to not be awake. It's just the way it is. What seems to be obscuring it is the belief in a story about a me that doesn't really exist. It is an illusion. An illusion with its own seeming reality. But when this recognition sinks in, when it becomes clear, it is so obvious that that's just the way it is anyway. And all of that seeking was just a story. Wasn't real. The me, the subject that all applied to, was made up. It was a story that appeared within you. You that knows all of this experience. But maybe way too focused, way too zoomed in, way too hypnotized with this, the seeming belief in reality in this story, to be able to stop and dilate the attention out enough to actually have the clarity necessary for this recognition to come through. And when I talk to people, I don't have an agenda, because all that there is awakeness. All that there is enlightenment. All there is this beingness, this knowingness. Anyway, it couldn't be any other way. So it doesn't matter to me. There's no real me that it matters to. So in a way, I don't really care. Not in the way that a person would insist on things, that would be attached to things. There's no way that you can, in the sense of the mind, predict what this is going to be like. Any mental model isn't going to come close to this, because this is outside the world of the mind. The world of the mind kind of appears within this knowingness and as it. Same with the kind of later stages of this. There's no way that you can predict what that's going to be like. There's no way that you can know. The illusion, when you're still subscribed to it, know what that is, because you believe that's the way it is, that's your reality, until it's not. At the risk of making it sound complicated, it's like, before there was an assumption that I stopped here and I was looking out at a world. There was space in between the objects out there, and I was a separate unit moving through a separate world. And it was like a movement. It was like a movement out towards. It was like an energy, an adding to, that was happening constantly. And it wasn't until I asked the question, do I stop here? Where does what I am begin, and what I'm looking at stop? Where is the space? When I'm looking at something, where is that appearing? Do I stop here? Do I stop here? Do I stop in the head or at my eyeball? Where does the object begin, and me that is aware of it begin? And it turns out that there's no separation between the division simply in experience isn't there. It never was there. But there was a thought that was moving out, that was suggesting I stop here and I'm looking at that object which is over there. And that was paper thin. There wasn't any substance to that assumption, because that clearly isn't happening. There's no division between what I am, what knows experience, what knows the seeing objects in the world, and the objects themselves. The mind couldn't even go near that. There's no way the mind could predict what that looks like, because it's not a concept, and it doesn't look anything like anything other than what I was looking at the whole time. But the difference is enormous. Without that filter, without that thought that says I am a limited entity that stops here, in this window looking out, like the window was never there. There was never that barrier between me and the world. In fact, me and the world don't make any sense in direct experience. So listening to that, are you inclined to look for something in your experience after just hearing what I've described? Like, okay, where is the is what you're looking for a concept or an idea about what I'm talking about? Because it's none of that. It's just what's already here, without the concepts, without the idea, without the assumption. It just gets very confusing for the mind, but in a way that's a good thing, because at a certain point the mind will just give up, or the mind won't be paying attention. It'll be out the road for a bit, and then what I'm talking about will have a chance to be recognised, to become clear. But it's this sneaky identification, belief in the me, the story. But don't look at what the story says. Look at who that story refers to. Who is the me that's having these problems with this seeking? Is there a me there? Is there a me when I'm simply not thinking about it? Or when I'm not thinking about it, is there a me that's not thinking? That's how sneaky it is. Is there a me that's having the experience of absence of thought? In which case that's a very, very subtle, very sneaky thought. The assumption that there is a me, there is a separate self in the first place. And I say a lot, I can't help but make this sound complicated with words. There might be just one thing that someone will hear and that'll be enough to just click. And when that happens, the mind stops, and this seeking is just forgotten about for a second. There's a gap there in seeking. There's a contentment, inherent contentment in just this. And that recognition could come through in a split second. It could come through gradually over time. But it's that assumption that there is a me trying not to think. There is a me that resists thoughts. There is a me that's even thinking, that the thoughts refer to by default, rather than they're just being thought. Because there's no inherent problem in thought. The problem is a thought that says this isn't the way it's supposed to be. It's when it gets very paradoxical. The thought that says there's a problem with experience. That thought assumes the reality of the one who is having the problem. And the mind won't quiet down until that self-referential assumption, subtle thought, has been exposed for what it is. That might be wrong. Nothing is a certain way, but for me that was the way it was. That self-referential assumption had to be seen as a thought. And the thought has a feeling flavour to it. It's not an overt narrative thought. It talks about itself by relating to other things, to other contents, to other experiences. That's how it talks about itself, but in doing that it passes itself and looks out onto the content of thought. But in doing that it reinforces itself. Turn that around by stopping and seeing, what does this me feel like that thinks about the world, that thinks about my experience, that thinks about awakening? And where is it? Is it even there? Is there a me looking? Is there a me hearing? Is there a me thinking and talking? Or is it simply seeing? sound, thought. Does the me need to be there for that to happen? Is there a belief that says the me has to be at the centre of this seeming experience to experience it? Does there even need to be an experience for this to be this? Anyway, I'll leave it there. Talk to you next time.